No time for fancy intros. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get to it, shall we? I'm Rant with my review of AEW Dynamite, as well as my AEW / New Japan / Stardom / CMLL Forbidden Door 2026 predictions. Is it really a forbidden door when everybody can just walk on through to the other side, walk on through to the other slide, walk on through to the other slide, and just take a dish or borrow a cup of sugar or borrow a cup of olive oil or extra virgin olive oil and just go back to their house and then come back around the same time next year? Anyway, I said it wasn't going to be a fancy intro, so let's just get right on into it. They were in Rio Rancho, New Mexico at the Rio Rancho Events Center. They had around 3,000 people or so. This was a better crowd than last week. I really wasn't harsh enough towards the crowd last week. Granted, the show was, it's issues. But nevertheless, Nigel's on commentary, no Taz. Hopefully Taz is okay. And we start with the Death Riders, with Jon Moxley trying to motivate his guys, and Will Ospreay is also there. They're in the back of whatever this particular area of the building is. And speaking of Jon Moxley, let's talk a little bit about Jon Moxley, why don't we? Or let's talk about what Bully Bubba Raymond Ray Dudley fuckwit had to say. This guy said he could beat the shit out of Jon Moxley. He said that the Death Riders have not been beneficial to AEW at all, or haven't helped AEW at all. I'm paraphrasing. You can look for what he said. But he could beat the shit out of Jon Moxley. Bubba Ray, that doesn't look like he could actually win a fair fight if he, even wanted to. And I'm going to give a few examples as to why. The guy would always take advantage of certain talents like, say, Rico Constantino and Rene Dupree and others. He would take liberties with them because he was brought up tough and everything, so tough that he wouldn't even offer any of the LFG talents any advice. And if they got released and they couldn't cut it, well, fuck them. This guy that basically is lucky that Devon was his tag team partner and that they were able to get many, opportunities in WWE after ECW was pretty much going to go belly up. And then they got opportunities in New Japan and in TNA where they had to stay for a goddamn while because they were, not really wanted in WWE anymore. I mean, be honest. Outside of what the Dudleys did with Edge and Christian and the Hardys, name some other really good stuff that the Dudleys did. And then when they split them up, okay, Devon as Reverend Devon, it was what it was, but Bubba was just doing a variation of the Dudley Boys gimmick because that's all he could fucking do. He finally got a singles run in TNA, he won the title in 2013, the whole Aces and Eights thing. He talks about how the Death Riders haven't helped AEW. And I am very, adamant and cemented with my feelings that I do not like the Death Riders at all, and I will explain why here and, later in this review, because there's a lot of Death Riders all over the goddamn show, and also during Forbidden Door. But that being said, Aces and Eights was one of the worst stables, factions, whatever you want to call it, in wrestling history. It's not that they didn't have talent there, it's that TNA had no goddamn direction. And you have this guy who, at best, was a mid-card act, acting like such a goddamn tough guy. Now, as a tag team wrestler, there's no doubt that the Dudleys are one of the best tag teams of the 21st century. And even into I'd say 2008 or 9, that kind of stuff. I mean, when they eventually split up, it was what it was. But when Bubba Bully Raymond got a, TNA title run, the company was rapidly eroding. Now, whether that was his fault or not, it really wasn't. Dixie's a fucking bitch and a stupid moron. They couldn't run the goddamn company at all. But BFG 2013 flopped. Now, part of that was due to the fact that TNA could never market their pay-per-views properly. It was also on the West Coast. And Hogan also left just before that. Now, you took liberties with a bunch of other talents and everything, acting like a big old tough guy, when I guarantee you, Rico Constantino, who, a former cop, a guy that has been in a lot more skirmishes and is a lot more of a legit badass than Bubba Bully Raymond could ever hope to be, he wanted to take advantage of him. He booked Ring of Honor into the goddamn toilet. And proof that he had no goddamn creative juices because he learned it from Paul Heyman, who at best was a creative guy that should have never been given the checkbook. Hey, let's talk about Bound for Glory 2025 when they face off against the Hardys. I saw that match, if you want to call it that, and it was pathetic because Bully Bubba Raymond is pathetic in this day and age. He's on Busted Open Radio, so somebody else, don't worry, I'll get to them. But Josh Barnett, Josh Barnett, pretty legit tough guy. Saw him at a couple shows. One was a New Japan show that was in Seattle. And another was one of the Wrestle Dreams. I think it was 2023. I think it was 2023. Maybe it was 2024. The whole point is I saw him take on Claudio. And Josh at that point, even though, yes, he is at the tail end of his physical career, could still beat the shit out of Bully, Raymond, Bubba, whatever. There's no way he could win a goddamn fight. He could win a fight against a fan, because a fan, unless a fan is a former Marine or a former MMA fighter that just happens to be attending the goddamn show. Sure, any schlub would lose to Bully Raymond, but good goddamn Christ, this guy just loves to talk out of his fucking ass like he was some kind of big single star. He's been latching onto his ECW persona, a company that died 25 plus years ago. Moxley has been a champ in WWE, AEW, New Japan, and everything, and Bubba Bully Raymond is lucky that he ever got a TNA title run. It's because they had no other legit main eventers, and there we are. Multi-time tag team champion, again, one half of one of the greatest tag teams of the 21st century. But, yeah, he talks out of his ass a whole lot. But speaking of talking out of the ass, Tommy Dreamer, who loves to talk out of his ass and talked about killing Heyman on the Mania 17 pay-per-view. No, really. He talked about doing that. He recently got let go from TNA. I'm not going to kick Tommy Dreamer when he's down because, look, everybody deserves to earn a living as long as they're not a stupid MAGA fuck that is a goddamn poisonous, creep like the criminal piece of shit in the White House. But that being said, Tommy Dreamer has proven he has no goddamn creative instincts because he learned them from Paul, but still, doesn't deserve to lose his job. Hopefully can find a steady income. But to be perfectly honest, kept wrestling well past the time that he should have. Now, I don't know what he earned in WWE. I know that he was way in debt to Paul Heyman, which is probably why he decided that he was going to try to do that thing at WrestleMania 17. Thankfully, he didn't. I will say this much, though. Tommy Dreamer, at best, was a good undercard guy that could not be the guy, but could be somebody you could root for. And yes, in ECW, he was a star. And for a brief moment, he was actually somebody that WWE could feature, at least somewhat prominently. Name the last really good thing that Tommy Dreamer did in a wrestling ring. Can you come up with anything in the last 15 years? No. Yeah, he won the ECW title, or the WWE ECW title, in like 2009 when he signed a new deal, and then he was gone within a year of that, and then they did the ECW Hardcore Justice, but they couldn't call it ECW because WWE owned the rights, and it was a big old mess. So, he's doing Busted Open Radio stuff, and look, he was upset, and legitimately, again, a lot of people losing their jobs. It is a tough market out there, and I hope professional wrestlers, whatever, as long as you're a good person, deep down, I hope you can find what you need. It's tough out there. But Tommy Dreamer apparently said a lot of shit to a lot of people and did some questionable shit to people. Charlie Bravo. Carly Bravo, however you say it. Yeah, look at what he said about Carly Bravo. Who is in AEW, I believe is part of Ring of Honor. I think he's part of Shane Taylor Promotions. The guy can do some athletic stuff. I'm not saying he'll ever be a world champion in a major promotion, but what Dreamer said to him, oh, there's no way to market him. Yeah, that's ridiculous. There are a few other women that have come out talking about questionable spots that were done at indie shows, and one was Danny Jordan, who I actually met, had a brief interaction with at an indie show back when she still wrestled. I think she stopped wrestling, and God bless her. Whatever she needs to do for her own well-being. But she was the real mean girl, I even have a shirt of hers. I was victimized by Danny Jordan. And I liked her persona, but she talked about being in the early stages of her career and Tommy Dreamer doing a really creepy spot with her. First off, I don't really believe there would be a reason for her to, make that up, especially if there's photographic, video evidence, whatever. And other people have backed up stuff, that has been talked about. Mickie James, of course, came to the defense like, oh, Tommy Dreamer is always nice to me. Here's the thing, and I don't care if it's Tommy Dreamer, Bubba Bully Raymond, or whoever. We're all professional wrestling fans. We are. But you can't use the thing, well, they were always nice to me, so that doesn't mean they did anything bad. We all have issues that we're dealing with and everything. Personally, I would never victimize somebody like that because I was actually raised to be a decent person. And I have seen some shit at indie shows that I was very upset by, stuff that was addressed by the promoters. But I will say this with Danny Jordan, she didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. And if Tommy Dreamer did actually do that shit, then yeah, he deserves to be drugged across the coals for that shit. It was also what he said about, you remember what he said about the flight attendant, on the plane ride from hell, Dark Side of the Ring? Oh, his double ponytail is, offensive or whatever. It's offending somebody and stuff about, what Ric Flair couldn't have done that and everything and that kind of stuff. Yeah, he walked that stuff back, and whether it was edited or not, he still shouldn't have fucking said it. So, in short, Tommy Dreamer probably needs to understand that if he keeps opening his mouth, and like just doing this kind of stuff, he just shuts up and lets the shit slide, maybe he can get a job in some kind of creative. Maybe WWE will come calling. I don't know if AEW will come calling because I don't know what the fuck he could do there. But yeah, I hope everybody that dealt with anything when it came to Tommy Dreamer, can find some kind of peace. And I will say about Bubba Bully Raymond, yeah, he would get the shit beat out of him. He would get stretched. He would get destroyed by Josh Barnett. He would get destroyed by a lot of wrestlers today. One, he's in his 50s, and whether he slimmed down or not, he was never necessarily known as a great athlete. So, yeah, maybe sit this one out, Bubba, for people basically just say, oh, I remember that guy. He would always say, get the tables. So it's your fucking fault that we got to deal with that. You goddamn piece of shit. So anyway, let's talk about AEW Dynamite. God, that was a lot of stuff that I talked about, but that was fun. So we start with the Death Riders. This is not going to be a hugely detailed review, by the way, and the Forbidden Door predictions will not take very long. So I just figured I'd sandwich all this shit in there. So it's Brody and Bandito and Mystico against Jon Moxley, Claudio, and Wheeler Yuta, who really is an uncircumcised string bean that they feel the need to put him in tights. He literally looks like, a zit that you would pop with a pin. Whatever. This is a better crowd than last week. Anytime Yuta basically gets in any offense on any legit wrestler, it drags them down. By the way, fuck guys, fuck Trump, fuck you if you believe any of that shit or buy into any of that shit, because we need to come together as a country. We do not need this criminal piece of shit in the goddamn White House, and for those that voted for him, you got what you voted for. Brody does a cool thing where he's basically holding hands with Mox and Claudio to do a flip off the ropes, which got a big reaction. I've seen him do shit like that similar times or similar type shit rather, in historic Washington Hall, which I should have put the quotations up for, at a couple Defy shows. But anyway, the match was what it was. I mean, I'm sorry, Yuta, I can't take Yuta seriously. The crowd was into it. Claudio hit Brody with the belt, and Brody got pinned, which makes me fear that actually Bandito will not win this weekend. If Brody, whatever happens, somebody needs to take that fucking title off of Moxley, is all I'm going to say. Team Briscoe's in the back. Renee has a Rebel shirt. I really hope the Rebel can have as much, easing of what she's dealing with. ALS, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Yeah, they said stuff, and Orange Cassidy said stuff, and I started zoning out. Harley is dressed like Supergirl. Fun fact, I actually rewatched the 1984 Supergirl, with Faye No Wire Hangers Dunaway, and Helen Slater in her debut role, and Peter O'Toole was in it for some reason. It wasn't a very good movie. I'm actually going to be watching the new one. Depending on when you see this, I may have already watched it. So, anyway, Harley is dressed up as Supergirl taking on Marina Shafir, who kicks Harley during her entrance, and good goddamn crap. This is one of those TBS survival of the fittest matches. Or one of the ones where the winner faces off, or goes to the match. Whatever. Later, Marina tried to do her finish, Mother's Milk, which, God, I feel like never drinking anything dairy-related again. I feel like taking out cows, just hearing that. But anyway, she did the thing, and Harley, flipped over like Shayna used to do for the Barracuda Clutch. And because Marina's a fucking idiot, I think, we still don't know her, but I believe she's a fucking idiot. She gets pinned, so good on that. Mercedes cuts a pre-tape promo about Maya World. They did tape Collision, by the way, after this, and I'm sure we'll add a couple more matches to Forbidden Door. I just do not care enough. Ospreay versus ELP. They did, look, I'm going to sound hypocritical if I say, just something about a later match and not something about this. ELP and Ospreay being a little more competitive makes sense, even though a lot of history ties back to New Japan, back when New Japan actually had crowds and stuff like that. But they flipped for their lives. They did some chops. They did some fancy stuff. Don't get me wrong. ELP beat cancer diagnosed, I forget what kind. Good on him. So happy for him. And him and Will had a decent match. It's just, you could argue that a couple of these matches could have been cut down by a little bit. But later a Styles Clash and a Hidden Blade 1, 2, 3. And there we are. And then they gave Daniel Garcia an entrance where he's walking from the goddamn street. They're giving this guy, who they've given so much TV time to, and it has never worked. There was like a brief moment with the whole Jericho thing where he could have broken away from Jericho and maybe not been a huge force, but they could have done something. But no, he went right back to Jericho, and then the stuff just... It's stupid. It's stupid because none of this is working. So they gave Garcia a long entrance, and they should have just had him walk around the building, pull an Ernie Ladd, and leave. God, I compared Daniel Garcia to Ernie Ladd. I'm sorry, Ernie. I'm so sorry to the ghost of Ernie Ladd. Swerve versus Daniel Garcia. This went through a break. Now, yes, ELP and Ospreay was competitive, but you could understand that. Swerve should have wiped the floor with this guy. Because I'm sorry, there will never be a chance in hell that Daniel Garcia is going to be anything more than what he is. And what he is somebody that's kind of eroding in front of our eyes. He seems to be smaller and frailer. He kicked out of the house call later. He kicked out of the house call. What did this do for Swerve? By the way, Swerve did hit a Hidden Blade. So, okay. Ospreay made the save. And then Garcia took the bullet for goddamn Ospreay with something. This did not help Swerve versus Will at all. Here's the thing. If Will had been competitive against ELP, like, okay, he's trying to come back, but he's facing an old rival, and Swerve mops the floor with Garcia, then you're really building something, despite the fact that they have stumbled into this whole thing with the Death Riders, and it has not worked. It has not been good, this training thing. And I know that some people, like, there might be some mutuals that watch this that seem to be thinking I'm too hard on the Death Riders. I was there for the beginning of Moxley's reign. I will go back to that because that was one of the worst moments that I had ever seen live. And I'm never going to forgive the fact that that happened. And this has not gotten Garcia, Yuta, or Marina over. Because you can't get them over because there is no way that you could get anything out of them to make them over. You could do the moves. That doesn't mean you have the charisma or the physical abilities to draw people. And oh, they pop for the dance. Oh, great, it's New Mexico. They don't get out much. So, why did they do a shirt like that for MJF and Callis? Why is Trent still here? You can't tell me that guy couldn't just go do something else or work the indies for a bit and instead of taking up a roster spot. And I'm not talking about getting fired, but it's just like, go do something else. He spent more time on the goddamn injured list than most. Jack Perry took on ZSJ in a match where remember the whole thing, the rumor of CM Punk, like, oh, the bridge isn't burned with AEW, and then Jack Perry tried to post some funny thing about a monkey burning a bridge, as if Jack Perry wouldn't be thrown over a goddamn bridge if CM Punk wanted to come back. He doesn't want to come back. There's no reason. There's absolutely no reason. Even if it was amicable, there's no reason. That ship has passed. So deal with it, Jack. You're lucky that you still have a job, because he's in the same damn position that he's in. He has never gotten better. And he will never get better. He is what he is. So ZSJ beat him up and snapped his arm. Perry took way more offense to quit than he should have. And then the Bucks and TMDK had a match. And I've been wishing for matches to go 5 to 7 minutes, and this is the one they did. Whatever. Post-match, Omega talks a little bit to ZSJ and says, oh, after Forbidden Door, people are going to forget about you just like last year. And ZSJ did have a good party line. Kenny tried to stay out of the hospital, right, darling? Yeah, I mean, not far off. Package on Tekla and Starlight Kid. Red Velvet and Queen Aminata is a survival qualifier. Red Velvet is improved, but I think Red Velvet's ceiling is what it is. Queen Aminata seems to be improving, at least as far as her kicks and strikes. The crowd was reacting to it. The opening needed way more arm drags. I don't think there were enough. You need about 50 more. Aminata did win with a nice kick. It wasn't bad. It seems like I'm rushing through this stuff because I got more to do. So, the Bucks are backstage. They're interrupted by Cope and Cage and the Dogs, who brawl for a bit. And then they put one of them, I think David Finlay, in a wheelchair, which just feuds been in a goddamn wheelchair for a while. And then Hairspray stopped them. Not copies of the movie Hairspray, oddly enough. And they're having a match at the pay-per-view. Take then took on Ricochet, Rico Tate, as it were. Rico Tate, actually, is something Trevor got compared to because he tried to channel Andrew Tate. Never tried to channel that creep. So, Take and Ricochet for the AEW International Championship. I expected shenanigans. They came later. We got moves. Ricochet forgot to pull the ref in front of him, and the ref just stepped in front of him. Good job, Trevor, you bald idiot. And trust me, I know about being a bald idiot. And the crowd booed heavily. Ref, you suck chance. Take was not happy. He did hit an Ian Raging Fire soon after, but boy, oh boy, they were not happy. Mark Briscoe comes out for a promo that took way longer than it seemed to. It's not the thrill of the fight like it has been in previous cage matches. He hates MJF and wants to get this over with and get a title shot and win the title. Okay, simple. Callis distracts, MJF blindsides, and then literally everybody comes out and just does a move, then gets taken out. Does a move, gets taken out. And then everybody just either evaporates or fights off. They just fight off. And Andrade saves MJF briefly, and then a ring shot to Andrade, and a J Driller to MJF. Okay, that was at least nice because that was a call to MJF saying, hey, you hit the J Driller, but never when it mattered, basically. So that's pretty much it right there. That is Dynamite. That was a quick Dynamite review. And now I'm going to get to the Forbidden Door predictions. 10 matches as of now, as of this recording. Very late Wednesday, early Thursday, so apologies if I don't have more of the pre-show matches. Divine Dominion of the very, very talented and beautiful Lena Cross and Megan Bayne, who hopefully leaves a spray tan at home, taking on Thunder Rosa and Olympia, who looks like she could split the world or split somebody. Moving on. AEW Women's Tag Title match, and Thunder Rosa announced this and says, I am bringing somebody. A buddy of mine actually called it was Olympia, and I have the Divine Dominion winning. It's on the pre-show. I think it'll be a good match. I'm hoping for at least 8 to 10 minutes. And I'm glad. I love Thunder Rosa. What a fucking talent. I wish she was featured more prominently. But at least they get her on the card. And Olympia has a good look. So, Cope and Cage take on the Dogs of Chuck Clark Connors as well as David Toe Finlay for AEW Tag Titles match and Men's Tag Title match. A lot of titles on this show. Coping Cage will win. I think the match will probably go 5 minutes longer than it needs to. FTR are apparently taking some time off and will not be back for a bit. Honestly, stay away as long as you want because they get guaranteed money anyway, and being at home with their family might give them a chance to reset and refresh. More tag teams happening. Bucks versus Mystico and Dorado, who are El Sky team, taking on, I forgot the team name, but it's Shingo Takagi and Teton. I'm just going to call him T-Tane. Hopefully he doesn't do the same thing that they did in T-Tane, and if you know, you know. It will have referee Rick Knox, probably, more likely, and it will just feature moves and da-da-da-da-da-da, and the Bucks will win. Or Shingo and Teton will win. I don't really care. It'll feature, it will excite the crowd. They're going to be in San Jose. Moxley versus Bandito for the AEW Continental Championship. I'm sick of picking against Jon Moxley, so I'm just going to say Jon Moxley will win. And it'll be the same damn match it always is, where he hits forearms and he tries to do this and he just, all this. And I want Bandito to win, but I think that maybe they will have Brody win. And they could have Brody win. And then Brody could actually restore some credibility to that title because, good goddamn Christ, this title reign seems to be lasting forever. I believe it has been lasting since World's End. And it feels like it happened all the way back. It feels like after All In Texas, he just won this championship. The Death Rider stuff needs to end. It just needs to end, please. Still better than Aces and Eights, though. So yeah, I have Moxley winning, even though I love Bandito. Bandito wins, I'm not going to complain. Shota Umino taking on Pac. IWGP Global Championship. Shota Umino apparently recently won that title back. I think he won it from Andrade. They were trying with Shota, and I'm sorry, it's not sticking. Shota will win, unless they want to send Pac over to Japan, which, quite frankly, might be a smart move. Get him away from the Death Riders. Tekla versus Starlight Kid for the AEW Women's Championship. I have Tekla winning. They could hot potato it and have Starlight Kid win it, and they could continue this thing with Stardom. But I don't know if the crowd in Edmonton's necessarily going to give a shit about Tekla versus Starlight Kid. So I think Tekla's going to win. Mercedes versus Maya World. Women's Owens Final. That's unwieldy grammar. It's the Women's Owen Cup Final. Maya World shockingly got into this. She, after Willow got hurt and Mercedes got put in and everything, Maya World replaced Sari, I think, if I remember right. She won her opening match against Sky Blue, or her first match. Okay, then she beat Athena, even kicking out of the O-face. Like, all right, that's a bit surprising. And this is where the dream ends. I think Mercedes is winning. Now, look, do not misunderstand me. If they work something out and Mercedes says, nah, if I could put her over. Or, because Khan will go to his stars and say, what do you want to do, even though Khan says it's the final say, or he has the final say. It's entirely possible they ride this wave and Maya World goes to All In to challenge Tekla, but I don't know. I would be very surprised if they didn't go with Mercedes just because of star power, all due respect to Maya World. If they go with Maya, ain't going to complain one goddamn bit. I got Mercedes winning. Kenny Omega versus Zack Sabre Jr. I have Kenny Omega winning. Hopefully he will not have to go back to the hospital. Will Ospreay versus Swerve in a men's Owen Cup final match, something or other. Please leave everybody backstage except Nana. Have Nana do a couple things, but he's ineffective in the end, and Will Ospreay gets the victory. Don't have the Death Riders out there to celebrate because they have contributed absolutely nothing to this whole thing, despite what Tony Khan and others want to say. Will Ospreay will win. They are turning me away from wanting to cheer for Will Ospreay. That's in spite of Will's own behavior and hanging out with creeps like Paul Robinson. But that being said, Will going to All In is a smart move. It's just, I just wish they would have booked this better. So, Steel Cage, 12-man match, unsanctioned, whatever the fuck. If Mark's team wins, it gets the title shot. It's Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Takeshita, and Darby. Remember when Darby was a champion? Remember when Takeshita was... Oh, Takeshita is a champion. They just don't do anything with it. It's fine. It's fine. They're taking on Team MJF and Callis. Or DC MJF, whatever. MJF, Kevin Knight, Jake Doyle, Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and Andrade. Andrade is going to cost his team. Team Briscoe is going to win. Andrade is going to be away from the Don Callis family. They need to reset a whole lot of stuff. But those are my predictions for Forbidden Door because I literally have nothing else to say. They might add some matches on the pre-show. I'm hoping for a good show, and I think there are going to be things I enjoy. I'll be honest, guys, I'm kind of reaching the end of my rope with reviewing stuff and buying pay-per-views unless they find a way to make it more affordable. Yeah, they give you a lot for the $40 on HBO Max, but it's starting to drift away a little bit from wanting to pay for this stuff. I'm not going to pirate it. I will pay for it. That being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Renthlan. Boy, was this a long video. But until we see what AEW, New Japan, Stardom, CMLL, and whatever other people, please don't bring the furry midgets. Don't bring them. Short people got no reason to. Moving on. Nevertheless, until we see what they do on Sunday, happy trails to you.